After decades in power and after his regime murdered tens of thousands of its own citizens, Iran's supreme leader Ali Khamenei was killed in the initial strikes of Operation Epic Fury. The Ayatollah's death has prompted both exuberance and concern about who or what might fill the power vacuum.
In this episode, we speak with the senior director of the Iran program at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies about Khamenei's dark legacy and how his death has already begun to change Iran. I'm Daily Wire executive editor John Bickley with Georgia Howe. This is a weekend edition of One Wire.
I'd like to introduce you to 17-year-old Ayatollah Cross. Ayatollah was forced to compete against a male athlete who was allowed to play on the girls' team. She lost out on competitive opportunities and was even mocked on the field by this young man. But it got worse. Ayatollah endured vulgar sexual comments and abuse, words I won't repeat here, from this male athlete. So she decided to change in a separate girls' bathroom because he was allowed to change in the girls' locker room. Thankfully, Ayatollah shared her story with Alliance Defending Freedom, and alongside the Attorney General of West Virginia, ADF took a case to protect girls like her all the way to the Supreme Court. A decision could come down any day, and we pray that it protects girls like Ayatollah. She's courageously standing up for the truth that men cannot become women. Alliance Defending Freedom is asking all of our Morning Wire listeners to take a moment and visit joinadf.com/wire to send Ayatollah a quick message of encouragement and let her know she's not alone in this fight. That's joinadf.com/wire or text WIRE to 83848 to send an encouraging note or Bible verse and thank Ayatollah for bravely standing for the truth.
This episode is sponsored by Brickhouse Nutrition. You've probably heard about those weight loss injections that everyone's been talking about, and for good reason. The results can be pretty incredible. They work by helping regulate blood sugar and keeping your appetite in check. But here's the thing, not everyone wants to deal with weekly injections, especially when you start hearing about some of the side effects that can come with them. That's where Lean comes in. It's a weight loss supplement developed by doctors, and people are seeing some really impressive results. The ingredients in Lean are backed by research showing that they can help lower blood sugar, turn stored fat into energy, and reduce those constant cravings that make dieting so hard. This stuff is no joke. I am one of those people that eats sometimes a lot when I'm stressed. But once Lean came into the picture, I was able to rein in my cravings. Let's get you started with 20% off and free rush shipping so you can add Lean to your healthy diet and exercise plan. Visit takelean.com and enter WIRE for your discount. That's promo code WIRE at takelean.com today.
Joining us now is Behnam bin Taleblu, the Senior Director of the Iran Program at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Behnam, good to see you again. Thanks for coming on.
Pleasure. Always good to be back with you guys. Thank you.
So Ayatollah Khamenei ruled for 36 years in Iran. He was a power player, actually, since the Islamic Revolution in 79. So he's been there from the beginning. What is the reaction on the ground there to his death?
Well, largely the reaction is felicitation and jubilation. You know, Iran just went through its biggest nationwide anti-regime uprising in the month of January with 30 to 40,000 killed just in a matter of days. That was coterminous with one of the nation's largest internet blackouts. And among one of the many chants that we've heard was death to Khamenei. The Iranian population is quite literally no longer filtering itself when it comes to its views, values, and intentions here. They rightly hold the supreme leader supremely accountable for the state that their country has been in.
Now, for people who aren't familiar with Khamenei, how did he come into power 36 years ago?
Well, it was quite a bit of musical chairs at the top. Khamenei occupied the position of supreme leader, or more aptly put, guardianship of the jurisprudent. And that religious title is a manufactured title that Iranian officials said only senior clergy, only ayatollahs, basically the equivalent of a religious PhD, could have. But religiously, Khamenei has a religious version of an MA. He's a Hujjatul Islam, so he was kind of promoted overnight and pushed forward in the elite infighting after the death of the founding father of the Islamic Republic, Ayatollah Khamenei. I know that the K's can get confusing. I'm a first-generation Iranian American myself, speak fluent Persian, but at the same time, Khamenei and Khomeini can be sometimes confusing. I've made the slip up before, but trust me, we know who they are. Here, after the death of Khamenei was pushed forward by some of Iran's political elite, thinking that he would be a pliant cleric. But in his 3.5 decades in power, Khamenei has really consolidated the security services and brought in the military to politics, to society, and to the economy, and relied on them for his 3.5 decades of terror.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you specifically about that, his very strict, rigid regime and his method of rule. There was a fundamentalist Islamic aspect to it, of course. What are some of the defining characteristics of his reign?
To be brutally honest, if Khamenei had died on October 6, 2023, I think you really could have made the case that this individual would have been among one of the most successful anti American and anti Israeli autocrats of the modern Muslim world. Ultimately, Khamenei's legacy was about preserving, protecting, and defending the Islamic Republic and the Islamic Revolution. Abroad, he kept that government's disposition focused on exporting the revolution, on exporting terrorism, of seeking to pursue destabilizing weapons, including missiles and weapons of mass destruction, and continuing a foreign policy of death to America and death to Israel, even at the peak of American military superiority and unipolarity, even when it came near its borders. At home, it was a reign of fear, a reign of terror. He basically institutionalized the Islamic Republic after it was founded. He had strict dress codes that were always there from the get go, but also continued to be enforced. And Khamenei's style basically deflected blame from him for the mass repression and the institutionalization of Islamism. But ultimately, the Iranian population rightly held him accountable. So Khamenei's reign at home was a reign that did not budge, did not offer representative government, and really continued to push for the institutionalization of their own perverse brand of 12-hour Shiism.
One follow up to that, particularly the treatment of women under his regime. There's been a lot of reports about the specific laws, marriage laws as it applies to women, women in the workforce, etc. What was it like for women under his reign?
Well, unfortunately, in the 47 years of the Islamic Republic, one of the biggest social losers have been women, which is why one of the first and earliest protests against the Islamic Republic, which was about the hijab issue, was led by women just months after this regime was established in 1979. So it's not a shocker then, as things go on and the Islamic Republic continues to really tout this brand of Islamism, that not just women, but really all strands of society begin to push back. But there's no doubt that one of the most biggest losers of 47 years of an Islamic Republic across two similarly hardline and fundamentalist supreme leaders who have been instituting that version of Islamism have been women. So there are certain academic fields that women are prohibited from. There's certainly an underrepresentation in the job market, even though they can be overrepresented when it comes to advanced degrees. There's institutional discrimination at the judiciary and through the legal process of the Islamic Republic. And unfortunately, by institutionalizing Islamic law, it has done horrible things when it comes to, the age of marriage, for example, or a woman's right to divorce.
Now, what do we know about Khamenei as a person? I know there have been some almost flattering puff pieces and obituaries in some of the Western media, but what do we know about what he was actually like?
Well, fortunately, I never met him, but based on having spent many years of my life having to read every speech, every comment, every essay that this individual has written, you can tell that this individual has a fairly consistent worldview and a worldview that actually hardens or crystallizes the more they reach power. The old saying about power, which is that with power comes corruption, with absolute power comes absolute corruption. You really did begin to see that in the first few years of the tenure of Khamenei's supreme leadership. As a person, they say, however, Khamenei was a bit more timid. You could even say when it comes to crises, for example, every time there's a major protest, he retreats. This is something that some of his closest advisors and former family members who have been outspoken since the 2009 Green Revolution have said and have put at the service of Persian diaspora media. But Khamenei is many things to many people. He is a hardline anti-American theocrat. He is a failed poet. He is someone who carries the burdens and prejudices of coming from a very, very poor family that was discriminated against both for wealth as well as for going in to the institution of the clergy to begin with. And he always really envisioned, I mean, the failed poet thing in a sincere way, because he always envisioned himself as some kind of master literary figure. But in reality, the hard, brutal truth was that he was not. He was, in essence, really just a mid level theocrat put in charge of a major national security state. And when you have all these pretensions and presumptions about power, but you don't have the capability to follow that through, the country will end up looking like Iran does look like today, which is a country of amazing potential, but that really has been driven into the ground. So despite what some people have reported in obituaries about his personal inclinations, or that he likes to read Victor Hugo, it's his track record that matters. People are actually very complex. Terrorists can have families too. I'm not interested in how Khamenei treated his cousins or his brothers. I'm interested in what he did with the place where my ancestral family comes from.
Right. Now, who exactly will fill the power vacuum in the long term remains to be seen, of course. But even just with the fact that Khamenei is now out of the picture, how might that change things in the country now?
Well, even what we're looking at today, the Islamic Republic does not have a supreme leader. It does not have a commander in chief, but is still continuing a multi front missile and drone war against America, against Israel, and against many of its Arab neighbors. Even just earlier, it attacked Turkey, even, which is a NATO allied country. So make no mistake, despite not being at the helm, the legacy of Ali Khamenei is felt very much across Iran's political institutions and military institutions. You could say there is a vacuum, but the Islamic Republic is acting like it would be expected to act. I mean, this is a regime that within hours after losing the commanding heights of the IRGC in the 12-day war last June, also did something similar and instituted massive missile barrages against Israel. So there is room at this point in time to have a more open debate as to how much of Iran's foreign and security policy was an 86-year-old theocrat who had not left the country since 1989 really being involved in on a day-to-day basis, especially as he was sheltered and especially as electronic communications with him were cut.
Now, we have heard that not just the next level of leadership, but maybe a few levels down have been completely wiped out. That's what Trump is saying. Of course, there's a lot that's hard to confirm at this point. But who do we know right now in terms of who is calling the shots in Iran?
Well, I would say the most important person, the most important government entity, and the most important institution in the country are as follows. It's Ali Larijani, who is the Secretary of the Supreme National Security Council. He's by far, in my view, at the moment, the most important national security decision maker who is still alive, who is still that link between command and control in political institutions and military institutions, and also setting the general tone, tenor, and tempo of where the state will go. The institution that he leads, the Supreme National Security Council, is the most important national security decision-making body in the country. And then third, the most important institution writ large is the military, in particular the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. So for those who want to know where Iran will go or where Iran is headed, as we have rumors that Khamenei's son is supposed to succeed him as supreme leader, as we have reports that there is this interim leadership council of the president, of another cleric named Rafi, and the head of the judiciary named Ejei, as those three are quote unquote leading the country in a temporary leadership council. In reality, the power structure that matters is the Supreme National Security Council, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, and Ali Larijani.
Now, even if those individuals were wiped out, presumably there are Iranians who are still loyal to the old regime. Do we know what percentage of the population falls in that category?
Well, unfortunately, given their cohesion, large swaths of the security services are loyal, as well as hardline political, military, and religious elite, as well as you could assume some, but not all, of their family members and network of friends and veterans. Beyond that, in a country of about 91.5, 92 million, a back of the envelope assessment, all anecdotal, not really empirical, is at max 15%, which can still be a sizable number in a country that is that big. And the minority strategy of rule is the strategy that Ali Khamenei had inherited and perfected.
Well, as we've seen, that approach can last for decades. Let's hope those days are done. Behnam, thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate your expertise.
Always a pleasure. Thank you.
That was Behnam Ben Taleblu of the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, and this has been a weekend edition of Morning Wire.